defense will take place, and then we'll hand over to the candidate. So there will be a presentation first of approximately 20 minutes, then the different committee members will have an exchange with the candidate and ask a certain number of questions. This whole first part should last about, I will also try to be quite sharp about that, about 2 hours, so it will finish around 4 o'clock. Then I will kindly ask you, as well as the candidate, to leave the room so that the committee members can deliver about the results of the PhD defense, and then we will publicly also invite you in shortly after that and publicly announce the results of the PhD and of the defense. I start with presenting the different members of the committee, starting first with the PhD, the main PhD supervisor, Professor Claude Doucement from the University of Luxembourg. Next to him we have Professor Todd Lebert of the University Paris Descartes, France. Then there is Professor Linda Jardin of the Paris College of Arts from France. Professor Taisir Yamin from the University of Ulm in Germany. And finally myself, having the honor to chair the defense today, Professor Romain Martin from the University of Luxembourg. And so the introduction is made, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you very much all of you for being here today. So I'm going to start with a question. What is creativity? Researchers established a definition by which creativity is the capacity to invent something original and useful. What is creativity for you? When I was dancing in Paris, I often wondered what drives these choreographers who seem a bit weird. When Sadoc entered the room, he was a completely normal person. As soon as the lesson started, and we were afraid of him. We found his inner archaic drive, and that we had to find ours too. That's why I started to become interested in the profile of creative people in different domains, art, science, and everyday life. So this is a synthesis from a literature review of Beatty and Fernham, which summarizes all the studies that have been done on the cognitive and the conative approach. Cognitive approach is about intelligence, and conative approach includes personality. So here we have fluid intelligence, which is the inborn kind of intelligence, judgment and logical reasoning. Crystallized intelligence is all the knowledge that you acquire throughout your life. We have different personality traits: neuroticism, extraversion, openness to new experiences, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and psychoticism. Psychoticism is a personality trait that defines the tendency towards psychosis. However, for creativity, it's good to have a higher level of psychoticism. So this is not necessarily something. These people are more impulsive and maybe less empathic. In the present research, artistic creativity was analyzed amongst architects, scientific creativity amongst psychologists, and everyday creativity amongst the general population. You may ask yourself, why architects and psychologists? One answer is because they are not your typical artists and scientists. Artists and natural scientists have investigated extensively, so we decided to choose groups whose creative profile has not yet been examined as much in order to eventually be able to generalize formal results to these professional subgroups. Another reason for choosing these groups is that architecture and the social sciences are perceived to be in between arts and science concerning the creative profile. So their profile is a very interesting one to analyze. One general creativity test was used in the 3 groups so as to compare their creative profile. Additionally, one specific creativity test was used for every form of creative expression: artistic, scientific, and everyday creativity. As a last step, 3 scoring techniques of the general creativity test were compared within the three groups. So as I told already before, architects, they combine features of both artists and scientists. That's why for creativity amongst architects, a positive correlation between potential intelligence, ego strengths, which is the opposite of neuroticism, openness to new experiences, and psychoticism is expected. Ego strengths is the opposite tendency of psychoticism, because often creative people, they combine tendencies that might seem a bit contradictory. So at one hand, they have high psychopathological tendencies, but on the other hand, they have also very strong mental health to counteract these tendencies. The hypothesized model is inspired by the hypothetical causal chain from DNA towards creativity from Ising. I'm not going to go too much in detail concerning this model, because in the present study, a simplified version of the model was tested, where openness was used as a proxy for cognitive inhibition. Cognitive inhibition is the mind's capacity to tune out stimuli that are irrelevant to the task at hand. So in this simplified model, openness predicts psychoticism, which together with fluid intelligence and ego strength predicts trait creativity. We had 140 participants, student architects, with a mean age of approximately 22 years. So here we have the creativity test. This is the test for logical reasoning and different personality tests. I'm not going to enter into detail concerning the intelligence of the personality test. I'm only going to show you the test for drawing creativity. So here we tell participants, this is an unfinished drawing. Now it's your turn to finish it and try to do it in a most original and interesting way possible. Try to do it something different from that what other people would decide to do. And we say, you can do nothing wrong, everything is allowed. So here is an example of a creative drawing that was realized from an architect. So this drawing got a good creativity mark simply because all the different elements were integrated into one picture. And there is also some kind of humor in this picture. The initial model was found not to work out. As you see here, psychoticism was not a positive predictor of creative potential. That's why an alternative model was proposed based on the conceptual definition of creativity, which distinguishes between originality and adaptation. In this model, intelligence was very important for creating original drawings, whereas ego strength was very important for creating drawings that are reactive to task constraints. An explanation is that intelligent people have a larger database of information stored in long-term memory and can combine this information more easily and more quickly in an original way. Ego strength acts against the psychopathological tendencies, against dissociative thoughts, and prevents drawings from becoming unseemly or bizarre. Now we come to the second form of creative expression analyzed, scientific creativity. So which features are important for scientific creativity? For scientific creativity among psychologists, a positive correlation between creative potential, fluid and crystallized intelligence, negative neuroticism, introversion, openness to new experiences, low agreeableness, conscientiousness, and psychoticism is expected. The aim is to extend the model that was tested in architects by adding further personality predictors. Based on existing literature, we conceive that apart from intelligence, openness and extroversion favor originality, whereas ego strength and conscientiousness favor adaptation. neuroticism and agreeableness are thought not to distinguish between both creative problem-solving types. We have 121 participants, psychology students, with the mean age of approximately 22 years. Here's again the creativity task, the intelligence, and various personality tests that I'm not going to explain in detail now. I'm only going to explain the task for creativity in experimental psychology, which measures divergent thinking and convergent thinking. For divergent thinking, people had to invent as many original hypotheses as possible concerning the link between music style and personality. Conservative people prefer classical music. And who thinks that extroverted people prefer hip-hop? Yes, you see, these are quite common responses. It's a bit stereotyped, maybe not the most, but one of my participants had a very idea. He wanted to test the link between listening to carnival music and drinking beer. So for convergent thinking, participants had to choose one of these hypotheses and find an original experiment to test it. And this experiment was rated for originality and adaptation to methodological requirements. So this participant wanted to go to a carnival party and measure the amount of consumption and spillage. So this is indeed a very original experiment. However, it's not as much adapted to task constraints, because we can ask ourselves the question, is beer drinking really a personality trait? It might be linked to some personality traits. And also, wouldn't we need to go to another festival and compare the amount of beer consumed and spilled over there? So this is an example maybe of an experiment that had received a good rating for originality, but maybe a less good rating for adaptation. The initial model was not found to work out. Openness was the only significant predictor of convergent thinking. If you remember the study of the architects, openness here replaced ego strengths in the prediction of adaptation. So intuitively and with regard to the hypothesis, this result is surprising. One could have expected openness to be more important for originality. One possible explanation for this could be that openness together with extroversion gets sometimes perceived as a plasticity dimension, which is linked to reduced cognitive inhibition and more cognitive flexibility and permeability. So maybe this cognitive flexibility also helped psychologists to create experiments that were more adapted to methodological requirements. As for divergent thinking, negative agreeableness was the only significant predictor. So this means that more disagreeable people invented a larger number of original hypotheses concerning the link between music style and personality. It could be that more disagreeable people can more easily overcome social barriers and stereotypes, because in the end, the link between music and personality is very much stereotyped. Also here, it is important to keep in mind that low agreeableness is not necessarily something bad. It doesn't mean that people who are low on agreeableness are necessarily mean or bad people. They are maybe just a bit more dominant, for example. And for creativity, this can be good. And this also confirms the model of Baker and Fernham with regard to low agreeableness for scientific creativity. In general, none of the above hypotheses were really contradicted. And we can conclude that creative psychologists are above all intelligent and open people however sometimes disagreeable. Now we come to the third form of creative expression, everyday creativity. Everyday creativity refers to creative passions of ordinary people and their active pursuit in daily life. Various positive traits were associated to everyday creativity, like intelligence, ego strength, extraversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness. Negative traits like neuroticism and psychoticism were found to intervene less in everyday creativity and are not analyzed here. So for everyday creativity amongst the general population, a positive correlation between creative potential and intelligence, ego strength, extraversion, openness to new experiences, agreeableness, and conscientiousness is expected. The aim is to extend the model of Jauch, Benedict, and Neubauer by adding further personality predictors. In their model, openness was the only significant personality, and it predicted the regular engagement in creative activities. Creative activities were found to mediate the relationship between creative potential and creative achievement. Apart from regularly engaging in creative activities, successful creators also had to be intelligent. Apart from openness in the literature, conscientiousness is thought to stimulate engagement in daily creative activities. It is logical that you have to be conscientious if you want to attend your art class every week. Extraversion is thought to intervene in the capacity of the creator to socially sell his product. Indeed, stage performance is part of most creative activities. That's why we think that extraversion is a significant predictor of creative achievement. Ego strengths, agreeableness, and autonomy intervene in the mental health aspect of everyday creativity, which can be expressed, for example, in the form of humor. We conceive those various indicators of mental health as the building blocks of creative potential. We had 101 participants with a mean age of approximately 35 years. 2 different creativity tests were used. Again, the same test for fluid intelligence and various personality tests. Again, I'm only going to go into detail concerning the creativity tests. Creative activities and minor achievement were assessed by the creative behavior inventory. And this inventory measures creative engagement in 6 disciplines, like arts, crafts, science and mathematics, literature and writing, fine arts, and performing arts and music. For creative potential, the alternate uses task was used. So here, participants have to find as many as 6 possible alternative uses for the following objects. So what would be an alternative use for a shoe? Who has an idea about that?
A planter.
To plant flowers? Yes, that's an interesting idea. Another one? The same.
To
So-
give it to children, to make a bed for their pets.
Yes, this is also a very creative idea. You can also use the buttons, for example, for the teddy bear eyes if they don't have their eyes anymore. And sometimes women use a pencil if it's hot and they want to put their hair up. The initial model was not found to fit the data. So apart from openness, no additional personality predictor significantly intervened in everyday creativity. Further, openness was more important for creative potential than for creative activities. As in the initial model, the relationship between creative potential and creative activities was mediated through creative activities. However, the major difference between the hypothesized and the resulting model was in the fact that aside from creative activities, intelligence here was not important to attaining creative achievement. So here the relationship between intelligence and everyday creative achievement is a bit ambiguous, because in multiple regressions there was indeed a significant positive relationship between intelligence and creative achievement. So there might be some suppressor effects in this structural model. So we can conclude that intelligence is maybe not the most important predictor for everyday creativity, but most of all, openness is very important for regularly engaging in creative activities. So this means also that everyday creativity is not reserved to the intellectual elite, but is also accessible to everyone who is open enough to engage in these activities. As a last step, the creative profiles of the three groups were compared. The hybrid approach of creativity was tested, according to which some features are more domain general, whereas others are more domain specific. Here we see that intelligence and openness to new experiences have a more domain important. A major difference between forms of creative expression lies in mental health. Psychopathological tendencies like neuroticism and psychoticism are far more pronounced on the artistic level, especially when it comes to poetry. In the present research, ego strength is used as a proxy for mental health and is expected to show a domain-specific importance to creativity. Here again an example of an funny and original drawing that was realized by a psychology student, Ph.D. As expected, intelligence and openness were involved in creativity throughout the total sample. So this confirms the domain general importance of intelligence and openness. In the architect sample, we recall that it was intelligence and positive ego strength. Architects showed a healthy kind of creative profile that correspond to the expected profile of scientific creators. As for the psychologists, the effect of ego strength is the opposite one, so this is very surprising. Their creativity relied on intelligence and negative ego strength, that means emotional instability. So creative psychologists were emotionally unstable and showed more the expected profile of artistic creators. As predicted, creative people from the general population showed the expected profile of everyday creators. It relied mainly on openness and to a lesser degree on fluid intelligence. To summarize, whereas intelligence and openness to new experiences had a more domain general importance for creativity, ego strength had a very domain-specific importance for creativity. It turned out that architects showed the expected profile of scientific creativity, whereas psychologists showed the expected profile of artistic creativity. So even if architecture is perceived as an artistic discipline and the social sciences as a scientific sub-discipline, both disciplines are sometimes perceived as being at an interference between arts and science concerning the creative profile. This explains the results revealed and questions the vision of the creative architect as psychologically conflicted by associating this picture more with the creative psychologist. To conclude, everyday creativity is not reserved to the intellectual elite. it is also accessible to anyone who is open enough to explore these activities. This means that all of you have the possibility to be creative, so just use your potential.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The IT system went with us almost up to the end, and then we start the discussion with Professor Usman starting first.
Thank you, Mr. President.